when you work as a doctor on a cruise ship, one of the biggest frustrations you might encounter is the relationship between you and your nurses and you and your higher ups. That relationship can be beautiful or it can be very frustrating. Let me explain. From a nurse point of view, if you are a nurse, if the person that is above you is incompetent, you are going to be extremely frustrated and your contract is going to be very difficult. Meaning, if you are a nurse, a cruise ship nurse, you have plenty of experience, you're a smart nurse, you know your stuff, you've got the skill sets, you've got the experience, you've got the knowledge, and you're in the nursing team on a cruise ship, and you find that the lead nurse, meaning the nurse in charge, has less knowledge, less skills, and less emergency and ICU experience than you, then you ultimately are going to get frustrated because you're not going to be on the same page. And what I've noticed is that in a situation where the lead nurse, the nurse in charge, is less competent than the regular nurses, that lead nurse is not going to, because that lead nurse will realize that, oh, well, I mean, these people, they know more than me, they're more competent than me. That lead nurse is now going to attack the nurses on petty things. Things like the uniforms, things like, your lunch breaks, things like, silly things. And that's when you find that the lead nurse will now insist that, oh yeah, but I've noticed that, you guys are having white shoes, you should really have black shoes, or you guys have black shoes, I want you to have white shoes. Silly things that are just a matter of personal preferences. And then ultimately, the regular nurses are going to get frustrated and they're going to go to the doctors for help, which creates conflicts in the team. And now you, as a doctor, your life has just become a bit harder just because the nurses are not on the same page. Now, if you are a lead nurse and you are very competent, lots of experience, lots of knowledge, great skills, but your doctor is not so experienced, and so you must constantly correct your doctor. Oh no, doctor, are you sure this is what we should do? Perhaps it's better to do that. Oh, doctor, do you think that, Then again, you as the lead nurse are going to get frustrated. Your nurses are going to get frustrated, and the doctor is going to get frustrated. And if you are a doctor, whether it's 2 doctors or 3 doctors on board, and you find that you, the doctor, who's working under a senior doctor, and your senior doctor is not the most competent, meaning you're the doctor and you've got your competency level is higher than your senior doctor, you've got more skills, more knowledge. You're just a smarter doctor than your senior doctor just because you've got more experience and more knowledge, You're going to have a hard time because now you're going to deal with your senior, and your senior might get defensive just because your senior doctor will notice that, oh, this guy knows more than me, and it's going to get very defensive. And I've seen situations where I've seen excellent doctors, regular doctors, ship doctors, who were transferred in a ship where I was working as a senior doctor because there had been some problems in the previous ship. And the medical director will give me a heads up to say, hey, we're transferring Dr. John to your ship because there's been some major issues in this other ship there. And the senior doctor was very unhappy, wanted him fired. But, we're going to give him another chance. So he's going to work with you. And I said, okay, all right. And why did the senior doctor there wanted him to get fired? What was the issue? He said, no, he's written quite a bit of complaints about his competency level, lack of knowledge, lack of skills, just not a very good doctor, according to the senior doctor. So anyway, he's going to work with you for the remaining of his contract, and then you're going to do his appraisal. And I said, okay, fine. And then I'd work with that doctor, only to find that doctor was actually excellent. And then I'd ask the doctor, hey, after some few weeks maybe, all right, once we get to know each other, I said, you know what, I found you to be a really good doctor. What happened on the previous ship there, because between us, I can tell you that, the reason they transferred you is because your senior doctor was unhappy about your performance and stuff like that. And then he tell me, no, that's not, the reason why he was unhappy is because I had to correct him all the time because he was doing the wrong things, especially during life-threatening emergencies. He was a bit blank and he didn't know what to do. So I was taking over all major emergencies, and at the end, he became very defensive, and he probably told the office all these stories. And then I asked, but who was the senior doctor when you were working there? And then he'd tell me, and then I said, oh, okay, I understand. So yeah, you're gonna get frustrated if you as a ship doctor, your senior doctor is not too competent. And you as a senior doctor, now if you work for a cruise line where your medical director is below par, he's not the best of doctors, he's not the most competent of doctors, he's got limited knowledge in maritime medicine. You can have a situation where you find that your medical director has never worked on a cruise ship before, as a cruise ship doctor, never. And yet, he's there as the medical director, but zero knowledge about cruise ship medicine, certain challenges in different ports that all senior doctors will know, especially, if you are in the US and you know all the ports in the US and you know the Caribbean well. You know all the ports in the Caribbean. So you're comfortable with all medivacs, on the East Coast, the West Coast. You've done the Panama Canal, you've been to Alaska, so you know all the different challenges in the different ports. Perhaps you visited all the hospitals as well. You know how to deal with the difficulties when dealing with the private islands. And your medical director doesn't. You're going to get frustrated. And so, these are things that can make your contract excellent or not so great. And even on board, even when working on board, your relationship with your captain or staff captain can be great or terrible. There's nothing worse than a medical director that does not have your back. Now, talking about your relationship with the nursing staff. I've worked for different cruise lines and I've worked on yachts as well. And I must say that generally speaking, cruise ship nurses are excellent nurses. My last cruise line, I worked with some very competent nurses, but I also worked with one or two nurses that were... One particular nurse was the lead nurse, the nurse in charge. And that nurse, that was a male nurse. And look, it was just, at times I was left flabbergasted at the lack of knowledge and the lack of skills. Simple things like securing an IV line. That was just something that nurse did not know how to do. Put an IV and secure it. And so he would put IVs, and then these IVs ultimately would come out. When you put an IV, whether on the hand or on the popliteal area, there's no reason for that IV to come out. Even if the patient does a brisk movement or there's no reason, if the IV is secured, there's no reason for you to move your hand a little bit. You're lying in bed, and just because you move your hand and then the IV comes out, there's no reason. If it's secured, it is secured. And so I had to explain repeatedly, and I would tell them, have you never ever heard of a J-loop? You just J-loop your IV and then it's secured. Have you never worked in the ER? Have you never worked in ICU? And then that nurse would tell me, doctor, I've been working for 10 years and this is the first time that a doctor says that, I must secure an IV line by doing what you're telling me to do, meaning a J-loop. What's the point? I've never heard that before. And I would be flabbergasted. How come I'm the first doctor in your life, in your career, your long nursing career, 10 years at sea? I'm the first doctor to ever mention that. That's amazing. Or even things like administration, and so, when you put an IV, when an IV was put in, often the IV would come out. Then I would have now to leave what I'm doing and come and put the IV for you. There's no phlebotomist on cruise ships, right? So I'll have to come and do the IV for you now. I'll have to put in the IV and secure it properly. Or if you've put in the IV, then I have to come back and secure it. And it was just such a waste of time. Or even things like medication, right? IV medication. I would have to have a tight control and check to make sure that, you're giving it according to the administration guidelines. And so let's say you're putting the patient on levofloxacin and you tell him, okay, so you're going to give levofloxacin, you know how to give it, right? We're going to give this patient 750 milligrams, so it's going to run over 90 minutes, 1 hour and a half. I know. Or if you're giving 500 milligrams of levofloxacin, you're going to have to run it over 60 minutes. And so you give this patient 750 milligrams of IV levofloxacin, Levaquin. You've given all the instructions, and 20 minutes later, the patient is ready to go, and the nurse is asking you, hey, doctor, can I remove the IV? I've given it, everything is good. And I said, what the... what the hell are you on about? What are you talking about? It's been 20 minutes. You pushed in 750 milligrams. It's supposed to run over 90 minutes. I told you. I wrote it on the board. Oh, yeah, but why? We've always been giving it like that. What? Or a simple thing like paracetamol IV. please run it over 15 minutes because paracetamol can cause hypotension. I've never heard that paracetamol gives hypotension. It doesn't make sense to me because, we drink paracetamol all the time and it doesn't give hypertension. Paracetamol is acetaminophen. And I'd say, you know what, I don't have time to explain the pharmacology of it right now. Just give it over 15 minutes minimum. And often the paracetamol IV would be given over 2 minutes. And so now you have to make sure that you check that the paracetamol is given over 15 minutes, the levofloxacin, 500 milligrams over 60 minutes, or 750 milligrams over 90 minutes. You have to make sure that if potassium chloride is being given, it's been given correctly. So you're going to have to start explaining that, hey, that IV, I've asked you to put an IV because we're going to give some IV potassium supplementation to this patient. Why did you put the IV on the hand? We don't give potassium chloride on the hand. I would be flabbergasted. So they have to remove the IV now. And then, you've explained that potassium chloride is very dangerous. KCl is very dangerous. You have to give it slowly. So let's give it over its 10 milliequivalent. Let's give it over 30 minutes to an hour. The thing is given. There's no IV pump being used, although we have IV pumps on board, and the guy wants to calibrate it by looking at the drops. And that will make your life so much more difficult because now you have to micromanage your nurses. You have to make sure, because now you're scared, so you have to make sure that your potassium chloride is given properly. You have to make sure that the paracetamol is given properly, that the levofloxacin is given properly, that the mannitol is given properly, that the vancomycin is given properly. And that can really, really frustrate you. And so this is to say that, your experience, your nursing team will define your quality of life on a cruise ship as a doctor. If you have an excellent, I've had some teams that were so wonderful to work with. It was beautiful. All the nurses know their stuff. They're excellent. The doctor that works with you is excellent as well. It's just beautiful, and then, everybody's so happy to even go to work. When there's an emergency, everybody's confident. Everybody, everything is good. I've had emergencies when I was at Disney Cruise Line this year, actually, where that lead nurse I mentioned now, that male nurse, froze and did not know what to do. And you're like, wake up, my man. You need to do this and you need to do that and work with me. And ultimately, another nurse would jump in and take over. Because when an emergency, there's a medical emergency announcement, and then the medical team goes to the site and you find that he'll be the first one there because maybe he was in the area and he's just frozen there. And then you arrive and you see that nothing has been done. And so you start taking over, another nurse comes, take over, and then the guy is just there looking as a passenger, basically. And so that's you're drawing straws and you don't know who you're going to get working with you. You're hoping for the best. You need a bit of luck because you don't know what your team is going to be like. And this is perhaps a failure from your management. There are some recruitment gaps. You find that during the interviewing process or during the review of the candidates or the nurses, things were not done properly. And then you find that you're working with somebody with very limited clinical experience. You find that some nurses will have to call you for every little thing that could be dealt with by a nurse. A simple sore throat with a completely clear throat. No erythema, no exudate, no nothing. And then they call you at 10 o'clock at night. Oh, doctor, I've got a patient. I say, yes. You want to tell me more about the patient? Oh, yeah, the patient's got a sore throat. Okay. Is that why you want me to come? Is there a fever? Oh, I haven't taken the temperature. It's 10 o'clock at night or 11 o'clock at night or midnight. Now, if you want to hear more about cruise ship stories, please join me on Patreon, where I have lots of bonus videos that I do not post on YouTube. I also answer all questions on Patreon. You can ask me anything you want and I will reply to you. I will give you some one-on-one advice as well. You can DM me. See you on Patreon.